throwaway account because I don't want anyone to find out who I am, let alone where any of this is located. So all names or any information that can lead people to me has been removed from this audio recording. Let me give a little background on who I am and how I got myself into this situation. My name is, and I am in my mid-20s and have been struggling to find a job to pay my rent. My parents are both deceased, and I have no other family in the area. I recently lost my job at a local grocery store as a sales rep because the store went out of business. I am feeling desperate and alone, but I know that I need to find a new job soon, or I face eviction. Sitting in my cramped and dingy apartment, I slumped over the kitchen counter and rubbed my tired eyes. My hair was disheveled, and I could feel the stubble on my chin growing longer by the day. The stack of unpaid bills in front of me seemed to mock my financial struggles. The electricity was about to be turned off, and I hadn't eaten a decent meal in days. Over the past few weeks, I had applied to nearly every job I could find online, but so far, I had only received a few rejection letters. The job market in the city was brutal, and it seemed like thousands of other people were in the same situation. Each day that passed brought me closer to being evicted from my apartment and left homeless on the streets. I had already sold most of my belongings to pay rent, and now I had nothing left to sell. I felt hopeless and alone. The stress and anxiety of my situation were causing me to lose sleep and my appetite. I had never felt so desperate before. It was like I was drowning and couldn't catch my breath. It was on one of these desperate job hunts that I stumbled across an ad for a security guard. It was for an unknown company that I had never heard of before. But the ad read as follows.
Are you ready for a challenge? We are seeking a security guard for our new facility. The job requires a strong work ethic, excellent attention to detail, and the ability to work independently. The successful candidate must be willing to work odd hours and weekends. You will be well compensated for your efforts. If you meet these requirements and are ready to take on a new challenge, please reply for more information.
At first, I was hesitant to apply. It all sounded too good to be true, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was some kind of scam. But as I read further, I couldn't help but feel like this might be the opportunity that I had been searching for. The pay was much higher than any of the other jobs I had applied to, and I could start right away. Still, something nagged at me. Why was this company so unknown? Why couldn't I find any information about them online? And they are paying more than double the going rate for a security guard in my area. Despite my doubts, I applied to the job anyway, and to my surprise, I was contacted almost immediately. At first, I thought it was a bot rejecting my application, but to my surprise, it was a real person replying to me, or what I assumed was a real person. In the email I received, it said,
Thank you for applying for the security guard position. We are impressed with your qualifications and would like to invite you to come in for an interview. Please report to our facility at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We look forward to meeting you in person.
I was over the moon when I read that email. I thought to myself, this could be my chance at finally doing something with my life, something different. That very night, I scrounged up any food I had and ate a fulfilling meal to prepare for tomorrow. I made sure to go to sleep early to get a full night's sleep. But as I drifted off, I started having nightmares. In them, I was trapped in a dark, enclosed space, and something sinister was lurking in the shadows. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and the more I struggled to escape, the more the space seemed to constrict around me. When I woke up, I was drenched in sweat, and the memory of the nightmare lingered in my mind. Despite the unsettling dream, I was still determined to go to the interview. I got up to clean myself up because I realized that my appearance was not what a new employer would like to see. Luckily for me, I woke up a couple of hours before my interview, so it gave me the time I needed to prepare. After getting ready, I started to head out. I got into my beat-up old car, the only thing of value I have left, and started driving to the address given to me. As I got closer and closer to the location, I could feel myself getting more nervous by the second. It was like my gut was telling me not to go there. I chalked up that feeling to my desperate situation and nervousness about the interview. As I drove, the road became more and more deserted. Trees loomed overhead, casting long shadows over the asphalt. The sky grew darker, and the air grew colder. By the time I arrived at the building, I was shivering with nervousness that had built up along the drive. As I drove into the parking lot, I noticed that there was only one car parked there. It looked old and rusty, like it had been abandoned for years. I didn't think much of it, assuming that the interview was being held before they opened for the day. So, I parked near what I could only assume was the front door and walked over to it. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Nothing I did could get it to open. At this point, I checked the time and it was right at 9 a.m. I started to get desperate because I couldn't miss this interview. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. After about 5 minutes of failed attempts, I noticed a button painted the same color as the walls with small letters saying "Press me." I immediately pressed it. A few seconds went by, and I started to hear a hissing sound coming from a speaker hidden near the door. A woman's voice came over the speaker, asking,
"Who are you? And what are you doing here?"
Her voice sounded cold and detached, like she was speaking from beyond the grave. I quickly explained that I came for an interview at 9 a.m. Upon hearing this, the woman said nothing, and I just heard a buzzing sound from the door. I quickly pulled on the door, and it finally opened. I walked inside and saw a very dim room. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. On one side, I saw a reception desk, and on the other, I saw just some plastic chairs. In front of me, a solid metal door seemed to be reinforced. The walls were painted a sickly green color, and the ceiling was so low that I had to duck my head to avoid hitting it. Something was just off about this place. As I started to doubt my decision to come here, that same woman I heard on the speaker opened the door in front of me. I thought to myself in that moment, how is it even possible for her to move that door, let alone open it completely? But before I could dwell on it, she introduced herself to me by the name of. I quickly respond by introducing myself and explain why I'm there. Just nods at me and takes a seat at the reception desk, gesturing for me to sit in one of the plastic chairs in front of her. I quickly take a seat, eager to impress her and land the job. However, as soon as I sit down, starts asking strange questions.
How much do you weigh? How long can you run? Do you have any family that would miss you?
I feel a knot form in my stomach, wondering why these questions would be relevant for a security guard interview. But I push aside my unease and try to answer as best I can. Fires off about 50 more bizarre questions, ranging from whether I've ever played hide and seek as a child to whether I'm afraid of the dark. Despite my growing discomfort, I'm relieved when she finally tells me that I meet all the requirements for the job. I can't believe my luck and eagerly ask what the next steps are. Hands me a packet of documents to sign, which I start to read through. Most of it seems standard, but as I get to the last few documents, I start to feel uneasy. One of them mentions that the company will take care of all arrangements in the event of my death. Just as I start to have second thoughts, tells me that I'll be getting my first paycheck in advance for being the first hire, and any doubts I had disappear. I sign all the documents and hand them back to her, noticing a slight grin on her face as she takes the packet and hides it away in the desk. Then, she turns to an old, leather-bound book on the desk, hands it to me, and tells me that it contains everything I need to know about the position. She then leads me to the front door and says that I'll be starting in 2 days, and my uniform will be delivered to my home. I agree and I say my goodbyes and promptly get in my car to leave. As I start to leave the parking lot, I make the mistake of looking in my rear-view mirror and see. I notice that she has become sickly pale and lost all of her hair. Her previously vibrant, curly locks were now gone, leaving behind a bald head. But what shocked me the most were the 2 horns sticking out of her head. They were long and curved, like those of a bull. I rub my eyes quickly to make sure I am not seeing things. As I take my eyes off her and look back again, I see that she has turned back into what she looked like before. Her hair was curly and voluptuous, and her skin had a healthy glow to it. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. Was it my imagination, or did she really have horns? I shake my head, trying to clear my thoughts. I couldn't dwell on it for too long, as I had to focus on the road. But the image of her transformation stayed with me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something strange was going on. After the long and tiring drive, I finally reached my little apartment, but I couldn't shake off the image of her strange transformation from my mind. As I step inside, I notice a new letter on my kitchen table. Eagerly, I open it and find a check, which was much more than what I expected. I jump in joy, wondering if they paid me more than what I was due. But then, a little note falls out of the envelope. It read,
"We are happy to welcome you to our company, and we have added a first hire bonus to your first week's pay. We look forward to working with you."
Reading the note, all doubts of being overpaid vanish from my mind. I think to myself that my life is finally turning around and I can finally afford to treat myself. With that thought, I head to the bank to cash the check. As I return home with cash in hand, my stomach rumbles, and I wonder what I should eat. I notice the leather-bound book in my passenger seat that had given me, and curiosity gets the better of me. I flip through the first few pages of the book, and everything seems ordinary. But then, I come across a page with strange symbols and a language I do not recognize. I brush it off and continue reading. With my curiosity sated, I put the book down and go on my way to buy my first meal in weeks. As I return with 2 big bags of food, I make sure to take the book with me. I set up my table, eager to eat and read the rest of the book. But as I read, I noticed strange diagrams and unfamiliar terms that piqued my interest. Lost in thought, I devour my meal, while engrossed in the book's mysterious contents. As I continued to read through the leather-bound book, I noticed that the information it contained seemed to be getting stranger and stranger. There were chapters on topics that made no sense for a security guard handbook, such as ancient rituals, demonic entities, and even how to recognize signs of possession. The illustrations accompanying the text were also bizarre, with drawings of creatures that looked like they came straight out of a horror movie. I couldn't help but wonder why this book was given to me. Was it some sort of joke, or was it actually supposed to be a part of my training? And what did any of this have to do with the security guard position I had applied for? As I kept reading, I noticed a passage that seemed to answer at least some of my questions. It talked about how the company I had just been hired by had been around for centuries, with ties to ancient secret societies and occult practices. Apparently, they specialized in guarding sites that were deemed too dangerous or too valuable to be left unprotected by normal means. Suddenly, it all made sense why had asked such strange questions during the interview and why the documents I signed contained unusual clauses. I realized that I had unknowingly become a part of something far beyond what I had initially thought. Feeling a mix of excitement and fear, I continued reading, eager to learn more about the mysterious organization I had just joined. With my stomach full and the book in hand, I headed to the couch to continue reading. As I delved deeper into the pages, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement building within me. The book contained detailed descriptions of strange and mysterious creatures, some of which I had never heard of before. It also outlined the various tasks and duties that my new position as a security guard would entail, including the safeguarding of rare artifacts and relics. I couldn't help but feel a thrill of anticipation coursing through me. Finally, after years of struggle and hardship, I was going to have a job that was not only stable but also offered a sense of adventure and purpose. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a real chance at making something of myself. As I flipped through the pages, I couldn't help but be amazed at the level of detail and precision that had gone into creating this book. The illustrations were intricate and beautiful, and the descriptions were so vivid that I felt like I was actually there, seeing these creatures and artifacts in person. But as I continued reading, I began to notice something strange. Some of the creatures described in the book were not just rare or exotic, they were downright terrifying. Creatures with razor-sharp claws and teeth, with glowing eyes and strange powers that defied explanation. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of place I had gotten myself into. Despite my reservations, I couldn't shake the feeling of excitement that was building within me. There was something undeniably thrilling about the thought of being involved in a world so strange and mysterious, of having a job that was not only stable but also offered a sense of adventure and discovery. As I closed the book and settled into my couch, I couldn't help but feel grateful for this opportunity. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be, and I couldn't wait to see where this journey would take me next. As I finished the last page of the book, I realize it's already late into the night. The clock reads 2 a.m., and I feel exhausted from the day's events. I rub my eyes and decide it's time for bed. As I lay down in my bed, I can't help but feel a sense of excitement building up within me, but as soon as I close my eyes, nightmares start to creep in. I dream of the leather-bound book, but this time it's not just strange symbols and incantations on the pages. In my dream, the book comes to life, and I am sucked into its pages. I see creatures and monsters that cannot be described, and they chase me through the pages as if they were real. I wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, and looked at the clock, and it's already 7 a.m. I can't believe I slept through my alarm. I feel exhausted and drained and didn't get a minute of sleep. As I make my way to the kitchen to make myself a cup of coffee, I can't help but feel a sense of unease. I look out the window and see the sun rising on the horizon, but it doesn't bring me the usual sense of optimism and hope. Instead, I feel a sense of dread in the pit of my stomach. I take a deep breath, trying to calm myself down, and remind myself that it was just a nightmare. I sip my coffee slowly, hoping to wake myself up and shake off the lingering feeling of fear. I decide to spend the day relaxing and preparing myself mentally for the new job. After the nightmares I had last night, I can't shake the feeling of fear from my body. I spend the rest of the day in a haze of fear and excitement. Before long, I hear a knock at my door and get up to open it. There's a box with a letter on top. I pick it up and bring it inside, wondering what's inside the box. I take a look at the letter first. It reads,
Hope you are well. In the box is your brand new uniform and everything you would need to be a security guard. Have a good day.
Without thinking twice, I open the box to find a neatly folded uniform with the company's logo on it, along with a badge and a pair of black boots. As I inspect the uniform, a wave of nervousness washes over me. The reality of my new job is sinking in, and I start to doubt my ability to handle it. But then I remember the excitement I felt when I received the job offer, and I remind myself that I am capable of succeeding in this role. With a deep breath, I put on the uniform and admire myself in the mirror. It fits perfectly and makes me feel a sense of pride and purpose. As I look at my reflection, I can't help but think about what the job will entail. Will it be mundane and uneventful, or will there be moments of danger and excitement? I push those thoughts aside and remind myself to take things one step at a time. Feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation, I spend the rest of the day preparing for my first day on the job. I review the company handbook and make sure I have all the necessary documents and information, mentally rehearsing different scenarios I may encounter. As the day comes to an end, I try to get a good night's sleep, knowing that my first day on the job is tomorrow. As I wake up the next morning, I feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. Today is the day of my first shift as a security guard, and I can't help but wonder what the day will bring. I get out of bed and head to the bathroom to freshen up. As I brush my teeth and wash my face, I try to shake off any lingering feelings of doubt or fear. I remind myself that I have prepared for this day and that I am capable of handling whatever comes my way. After getting dressed in my new uniform, I make myself a cup of coffee and sit down at the kitchen table to review my notes one last time. I go over the company handbook and the protocols for handling different situations, trying to make sure I am as prepared as possible. As I finish my coffee, I gather my things. I grab my keys, my phone, and my ID badge and head out the door. As I walk towards my car, I feel a sense of pride and purpose, knowing that I am embarking on a new chapter in my life. I get in my car and start the engine, feeling a surge of excitement as I begin the drive to my new workplace. As I make my way there, I think about all the possibilities that await me. Will it be a quiet day, or will there be unexpected events to handle? I remind myself to stay alert and focused, ready for anything. As I approach the building, I can't help but feel a sense of unease. The exterior of the building is old and run down, with peeling paint and cracked windows. The surrounding area is quiet and empty, with no signs of life. The only sound I hear is the rustling of the leaves in the wind. I take a closer look at the building and notice that some of the windows are boarded up, while others are shattered. The front door is made of heavy, rusted metal and is covered in graffiti. The overall impression is one of neglect and abandonment. As I stand there, taking it all in, I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. The building seems to have a life of its own, as if it's alive and watching me. The hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I feel a chill run down my spine. I take a deep breath and try to compose myself. I remind myself that I'm here for a job and that I need to be professional. But the creepy feeling lingers, and I can't help but wonder what kind of place I'm getting myself into. I walk up to the front door as I did before and press the button to get buzzed in. After a few moments of silence, I hear a crackling voice on the intercom.
Hello, who is it?
It's me, the new security guard, I reply, my voice sounding shaky even to my own ears.
Ah, yes. Come on up to the 3rd floor. The office is on the left.
I take a deep breath, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness as I start to make my way inside. The building's interior was dimly lit, and the air was thick with a musty smell that made me want to hold my breath. The plastic chairs in the reception area looked worn and neglected, and the reception desk was covered in a thick layer of dust. It looked like years has passed since the last time I was here. As I walk past the chairs and desk towards the reinforced metal door, I can't help but notice the scratches and dents on its surface. It looks like it has been forced open multiple times. I hesitate for a moment before I push the heavy door open. Surprisingly, once it starts to move, it's like moving a feather, but the creaking noise it makes is unnerving. I thought to myself in that moment, how did I not notice these details when I first came here? I put that aside and go further inside, and the stairs are right on the other side of the door. The staircase is narrow, and the walls are peeling with paint. The steps creak under my weight, making me feel like I'm disturbing the silence of the building. As I get to the 3rd floor, I hear noises below me, as if someone is running up the stairs. My heart starts to race, and I can feel sweat forming on my forehead. In that moment, I run into the 3rd floor hallway, not waiting to see what was coming up the stairs. The hallway is dimly lit, and the walls are covered in peeling wallpaper. I make my way to the office on the left and knock on the door. After a few seconds, someone says,
Come in.
I slowly open the door and make my way inside the office. The room is cluttered with papers and files, and the only source of light comes from a desk lamp. A strange old-looking man is sitting at a desk, just staring at me. At a glance, I can tell this man's physique is very impressive for his age. He gestures for me to sit down in the chair in front of him, and I quickly do. After I sit down, the old man starts to speak. His voice is deep and gravelly, and he speaks slowly, but deliberately.
Welcome, young man. I am Mr. Johnson, and you will be my replacement.
His words catch me off guard. Replacement? I thought I was starting a new job, not replacing someone. But before I can ask any questions, he continues speaking.
You will be working here at the facility. Your duties will be varied and may change from day to day. You will need to be vigilant and pay attention to your surroundings. Your main objective is to ensure the safety and security of the facility.
I nod, trying to appear confident, but inside I feel a sense of unease. The old man's vagueness is unsettling, and I have no idea what to expect from this job. After he says this, he gets up and starts to walk out of the office. As he reaches the door, he turns to me and adds,
Remember, the rules are in place for a reason. Don't try to bend them or you'll regret it.
With that, he leaves the room and closes the door behind him, leaving me to ponder his mysterious words. I slowly make my way over to the desk and take a seat, feeling a sense of responsibility settle on my shoulders. I glance around the room, taking in the stark surroundings and the ominous feeling that seems to pervade every inch of the space. I pick up the folder on the desk and open it, my heart pounding with anticipation. Inside are only 2 pieces of paper, each bearing a short, cryptic message. The first reads,
Never stay longer than your shift.
while the second simply says,
Survive.
I feel a chill run down my spine as I read the second message. It's as if the air in the room has suddenly turned cold, and I can't shake the feeling that something is not quite right here. But with no other information or instructions, I have no choice but to clock in for my shift and begin my duties. I take a few deep breaths to calm my nerves and gather my thoughts before making my way out of the office to start my rounds. As I walk down the dark and the empty corridors of the building, I can't help but wonder what lies ahead for me in this mysterious new place. As I begin my rounds, the emptiness of the corridors gives me an eerie feeling. The only sound I can hear is the echoing of my footsteps, which seem to reverberate endlessly through the empty halls. I check every room, every corner, every inch of the building, but nothing seems out of place. Hours pass, and there is still no sign of any disturbance. The silence is almost deafening, and my mind starts to play tricks on me. Every little sound makes me jump, and every shadow makes me stop in my tracks. I start to wonder if the old man was just messing with me. Maybe there is nothing to worry about, and this is just a normal job like any other. But then, just as I start to let my guard down, I hear a faint whisper coming from down the hall. I freeze in place, trying to make out what it could be. But the whisper is too low and too distant to understand. I take a deep breath and start to walk towards the sound, trying to convince myself that it's nothing. As I get closer, the whisper turns into a soft humming, and my heart starts to race. I turn the corner, and there, at the end of the hall, is a figure standing with their back towards me. I can't make out any details, but I can tell that it's a person. I try to call out, but my voice catches in my throat. The figure slowly turns around, and as the light catches their face, I feel a cold shiver run down my spine. It's the old man from earlier, but his eyes are now empty and soulless, staring straight through me. I try to back away, but my feet are rooted to the ground. The old man starts to shuffle towards me, his movements slow and jerky. I can hear his labored breathing and the sound of his bones creaking with each step. I realize with horror that this is not a normal job, and I may have just signed up for something beyond my understanding. I tried to scream, but my voice was caught in my throat, and I felt like I was going to faint. The old man kept getting closer and closer, and I knew I had to do something. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and then sprinted past him as fast as I could. I could hear his footsteps behind me, and I knew he was chasing me. I ran down the stairs to the first floor, not knowing what to do. But as I entered the first floor, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In front of me was a creature unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was tall, with long, thin limbs and razor-sharp claws. Its skin was a sickly shade of green, and its eyes glowed an eerie red. I froze in terror, unsure of what to do next. The creature started to move towards me, its claws scraping against the concrete floor. I knew I had to hide, or I would be caught. In that moment, I snapped out of it. I quickly looked around for a place to hide, and my eyes landed on a nearby supply closet. Without thinking, I ran towards it and quickly closed the door behind me, holding my breath as I heard the creature's footsteps grow louder. I stayed in the closet, trying to control my breathing and remain as silent as possible. The creature searched the hallway for a few minutes before finally moving on. I stayed in the closet for what felt like hours, too afraid to move. Eventually, I gathered the courage to peek outside, and when I saw it was clear, I left and continued my rounds. But from that moment on, I knew that I was not alone in the building and that I needed to be careful at all times. As I walked around, my mind racing with fear and confusion, I couldn't help but wonder why I didn't just turn and run out of the building. It would have been the logical thing to do, to escape this nightmare and never look back. But something deep inside me wouldn't let me leave. It was as if an invisible force was holding me there, compelling me to stay and confront whatever horrors awaited me. I couldn't explain it, This strange feeling that seemed to emanate from the very depths of my being. All I knew was that I had to keep going, to face whatever was waiting for me in the darkness. The thought of leaving, of abandoning this place to its secrets and its terrors, was unbearable to me. So I pressed on, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in short gasps, and my feet moving as if of their own accord. By this time, I am halfway through my shift with only 4 hours to go before I could leave. The only floor I have not checked is the second floor. I make my way to the stairs quietly and start walking up them to get to the second floor. I prepare myself for what I'm about to see. I swing the door open and walk into the second floor, and to my surprise, it seemed to be a simple clinic. I start checking each room and nothing seemed off. But it's odd, every room had a mannequin in it. I just ignored them for the most part, but after checking each room and on my way back, I noticed that many of them have moved from their original spot. I think nothing of this at the time, but I keep my head on a swivel. As I get closer to the stairs, I hear running behind me, and I quickly turn around to face what's coming, and to my shock, it was a mannequin holding a scalpel a few inches away from my chest. I fall backwards in shock, realizing I was a few moments from death. During this time, unknown to me, another mannequin comes from my left, trying the same thing. In my stunned state, I reacted too slowly, and it managed to stab me in my arm. I rolled to the right and began to run into the closest room. I closed the door behind me and start to panic. The pain in my arm was unbearable, but I couldn't let myself black out. I had to keep my guard up, stay alert, and survive. As I frantically searched the room for any weapons or items to defend myself, I couldn't help but wonder how the mannequins had come to life and attacked me. My mind was racing with questions and fear, but I knew I had to keep a level head if I wanted to make it out of this alive. The room I was in was small and cramped, with only a bed and a few cabinets. I quickly searched through them, hoping to find something that could help me defend myself. After a few tense moments, I found a small knife in one of the cabinets. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I gripped the knife tightly in my hand and prepared for the worst. Outside the door, I could hear the mannequins moving around, trying to find a way in. I knew I had to be quick and decisive. With a deep breath, I pushed the bed against the door to create a barricade. It wasn't much, but it would buy me some time. As I sat there, waiting and listening, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The silence was deafening, and I could hear my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, there was a loud banging on the door. I held my breath, trying to remain as quiet as possible. But the banging continued, getting louder and more aggressive with each passing second. I knew I had to act fast. With a burst of adrenaline, I jumped up and charged at the door, hoping to catch whatever was on the other side off guard. To my surprise, it was the old man from earlier, his face twisted into a grotesque, maniacal grin. Without thinking, I lunged at him with the knife, hoping to take him down. But he was surprisingly fast, and he managed to dodge my attack. I stumbled forward, off balance and vulnerable. Before I could react, the old man tackled me to the ground, pinning me down with his immense strength. I struggled and fought, but it was no use. He was too strong. As he loomed over me, his face contorted with rage and insanity, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the end. Would I ever make it out of this place alive, or was this the last moment of my life? But in that moment, a mannequin stabbed him in the back. With the mannequins closing in on him, he suddenly changed his focus, his eyes filled with rage. He started attacking the mannequins with a ferocity that was almost inhuman, taking them down one by one with his bare hands. I watched in horror as he fought off the mannequins, and I knew that I had to get out of there before they turned their attention to me. Quietly, I made my way to the stairs, trying not to make any noise. Once I safely made it to the stairs, I checked the time and realized that it was 20 minutes until the end of my shift. The only problem was that the machine to clock out was on the 3rd floor in the office. Before I could think, my legs moved on their own to the 3rd floor. As I reached the 3rd floor, I heard the old man's screams growing louder, and I knew that he was in trouble. I had no time to waste. Once the old man went down, the mannequins would look for me. Luckily, the danger on the third floor was preoccupied at the moment, so I easily made it to the office. With 10 minutes to spare, I walked into the office and clocked out right on time. The only problem facing me now was getting out of this building alive. I slowly walked out of the office. Everything was quiet. As I made my way down the stairs, I heard nothing, not even wind. As I walked past the second floor, I peeked through the door and saw nothing. It was as if today's events never happened. I wondered if I was going crazy, but my wounds were very real. I kept moving forward and got to the first floor. I opened the door and again saw nothing. I quickly opened the reinforced metal door and closed it behind me. The feeling as if the building was congratulating me for surviving was the strangest thing ever as I walked out the front door. As I walked outside, was standing there waiting for me. With a confused look on my face, I asked what was going on. She congratulated me for making it out and said how not many people survive their first night. At that moment, I finally passed out. The next day, I woke up in a dim room wearing a hospital gown. My whole body ached, but my wounds had been treated. I looked around, but nobody was to be seen except for staff workers who wouldn't even look at me. I sat there contemplating my life and what it had become. After about 5 minutes of this, I noticed a letter on the nightstand next to me. As I opened the letter, I saw that it was from. She had written to congratulate me on surviving my first night at the facility, and she expressed how impressed she was that I had made it out alive. She then went on to say that I had a choice to make. I could leave and never come back, or I could stay and continue working at the facility. At first, the idea of leaving seemed tempting. After all, the events of the previous night had been terrifying, and I didn't want to put myself in danger again. But as I thought about it more, I realized that there was something about the facility that intrigued me. Despite all the horror that I had witnessed, there was still a part of me that wanted to know more about the mysterious mannequins and the strange old man. In the end, I made the decision to stay. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, but I felt that I had a responsibility to figure out what was going on at that facility and to protect others from the danger that lurked within. Plus, there was a part of me that was curious about what else the facility had in store. As I lay in the hospital bed, I realized that this was the start of a new part in my life. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I was ready to face whatever came my way. And with that, I made a silent vow to myself. I would do whatever it takes to uncover the secrets of the facility, no matter how dangerous or terrifying they might be. I smiled as I looked down and noticed the check behind the letter in my hands. Had given me a month off with pay and encouraged me to stay if I wanted to. But the thought of leaving never crossed my mind once I saw how much the check was for. Despite the terrifying events of my first night, I had found a sense of purpose and community in this place. And now, with a month off to recover and reflect, I was ready to face whatever the future held. It was a strange feeling, but I couldn't help feeling grateful for the experience that had led me here. In the future, I'll try to keep you guys updated with what I find out. But the only free time I get is when I am in recovery, so hopefully when you guys hear from me again, it's not too bad. Wish me luck.